Imagine walking into a conversation where you instantly shift the energy in the room, not by what you look like, not even by the volume of your voice, but simply by the way you choose to begin. The first few words you say act like a doorway, and whether that doorway feels ordinary or magnetic depends entirely on you. Too often people waste that doorway with something predictable, a flat "he" or a tired "how are you?" It's not that these words are wrong, but they don't spark anything, they don't ignite curiosity, they don't make someone lean forward and want to know more. Owning the opening means you claim that first moment as an opportunity to set the tone and to create intrigue and to signal that this interaction will be different from every other conversation that person has had today. And here's the truth, it doesn't require being the funniest or the smartest person in the room. It only requires being intentional. Think about the moments that stand out in your memory. Rarely is it because someone recited a perfectly polished line. More often it's because they said something unexpected that caught your attention, something that had just enough playfulness or curiosity to interrupt your autopilot. When you start a conversation with an interesting observation, a confident compliment, or a question that isn't the usual small talk, you immediately stand out. For example, instead of saying, "How's your day?" you might say, "Tell me the best thing that's happened to you today." That simple shift transforms a flat exchange into an opportunity for storytelling, and people love to share stories. It's a way of saying, I'm not just here to fill silence, I'm here to actually connect. The beauty of owning the opening is that it's not about performing, it's about being deliberate in creating a spark. The more authentic it feels to you, the more natural the energy will flow. If humor is your strength, lean into a playful comment. If curiosity is more your style, go straight into an unusual question. What matters is that the first line feels alive. When you start strong, you set the frame of the interaction, and people tend to follow that frame. If you open with boredom, the conversation will crawl. If you open with warmth, playfulness, or intrigue, the other person will match that energy. Here's where most people get it wrong. They put so much pressure on themselves to deliver the perfect opener that they freeze. But owning the opening isn't about perfection. It's about confidence. Even if your line is simple, if you deliver it with presence, it will land. Presence comes from slowing down, smiling with your eyes, and making your words feel like they were meant for that person in that moment. That's what makes it irresistible. You don't have to be a comedian or a poet. You just need to sound like someone who actually wanted to talk, not someone who stumbled into conversation out of habit. Another layer to this is the energy of assumption. When you open a conversation, assume that what you have to say is worth hearing. If you come in apologetically, the other person will feel it. If you come in with playful certainty, the other person will lean in. This is why rehearsing a few go-to openers isn't a bad idea. Think of them as tools in your back pocket. The goal isn't to script yourself, but to free yourself from the panic of not knowing what to say. A practiced line can act as a bridge until your natural flow takes over. Owning the opening also teaches you something powerful. You set the standard for the entire interaction. By taking initiative in the beginning, you subtly communicate that you're confident enough to lead, and people are drawn to that. This doesn't mean being domineering or overbearing, but it does mean guiding the first impression instead of leaving it to chance. That's the difference between being remembered and being forgotten. So the next time you find yourself about to fall into the trap of generic greetings, pause. Ask yourself, how do I want this person to feel in the first 5 seconds of meeting me? Do I want them to feel bored, or do I want them to feel intrigued? Then craft your words with that intent. A simple shift in the way you start can transform the entire connection that follows, because when you own the opening, you own the frame. And once you own the frame, everything else flows more naturally. Once you've stepped into a conversation with an opening that feels alive, the next step is learning how to use your voice like an instrument. People underestimate how much influence tone, pace, and rhythm have on attraction. Most of us spend so much time worrying about the actual words that we forget the way those words are delivered can be even more powerful. Think about a song you love. Sometimes the lyrics are simple, but the melody, the rise and fall, the pauses between notes, those are what stir emotion. Your voice works the same way. It isn't just a tool for communication, it's a channel for energy, intimacy, and authority. The way you use it can either draw someone in closer or push them away without you even realizing it. The first adjustment is pace. In everyday conversations, nerves make us speed up. We rush through sentences as though we're afraid of being interrupted, or we hope to get it all out before someone loses interest. But when you slow down deliberately, you send the opposite message. You say, "What I'm saying is worth listening to. I don't need to hurry." A slower pace instantly creates gravity. People lean in, they wait for the next word, they give you their attention because your rhythm demands it. It doesn't mean dragging your words, but it does mean resisting the temptation to rush. Next is pitch. A subtle lowering of your pitch when you want to emphasize something creates intimacy. It's not about faking your voice or putting on an act. It's about being conscious of the moments when you want to pull someone in. Think about the difference between telling a secret and making a public announcement. A secret is whispered in a slightly lower, softer tone, and immediately it feels personal. That same principle can turn an ordinary statement into something magnetic. A compliment said with a steady, low pitch feels genuine. A playful tease delivered with a lift in tone feels light and fun. The shifts you make in pitch signal emotional layers that words alone can't carry. Then there are pauses. Most people are terrified of silence in conversation, but silence, when used intentionally, is powerful. A pause right after you've made a point lets your words sink in. A pause before you deliver a playful line builds anticipation. Even a moment of quiet while you look someone in the eye creates tension in the best possible way. The pause is like the breath between musical notes. Without it, everything blurs together. With it, every note stands out. What's beautiful about learning to use your voice in this way is that it creates a sense of presence. You stop sounding like someone who is just trying to get through a script, and you start sounding like someone who knows the value of what they're saying. People feel that confidence. They don't just hear your words, they feel the weight behind them. And when someone feels your words rather than just processing them, that's when attraction begins to deepen. It's also worth remembering that your voice carries your emotions. If you're genuinely amused, warmth will creep into your tone. If you're truly curious, your questions will sound more alive. Trying to fake emotions with words doesn't work, but allowing your natural emotions to color your tone makes everything more believable. This is why authenticity is so important. You don't just want to perform confidence, you want to embody it, and your voice will give you away if you don't. Using your voice like an instrument is really about awareness. Start paying attention to how you sound when you're nervous, when you're excited, when you're calm. Notice the difference. Then, in your interactions, choose the version that draws people in. Practice slowing down. Practice lowering your tone for emphasis. Practice adding a pause at moments when you want to build anticipation. Over time, these little adjustments become natural, and the effect they create is profound. When you combine an opening that sparks curiosity with a voice that commands attention, you set yourself apart immediately. People may forget the exact words you said, but they won't forget how it felt to listen to you. And that feeling is what lingers long after the conversation ends. Once you've opened in a way that sparks curiosity and learned to use your voice like an instrument, the next step is to master the art of asking irresistible questions. Most conversations collapse into the same predictable script. Where are you from? What do you do? How was your day? These are safe questions, but they don't create energy. They keep things at the surface, and the surface is forgettable. Attraction and connection lie below that surface, and the easiest way to dive there is through questions that invite storytelling, questions that make someone pause, think, and reveal a piece of themselves they don't usually share. An irresistible question is one that doesn't feel like an interview, but like an invitation. Instead of, "What do you do?" try, "What part of your work makes you forget the time?" Instead of, "Where are you from?" try, "What's one place you've lived or traveled that still feels like it's part of you?" These shifts are small, but they unlock completely different answers. People light up when they're asked about something meaningful, and when they share, they attach that good feeling to the person who asked. That's why questions matter so much. They don't just give you information, they create emotion. The trick is to mix curiosity with playfulness. Not every question has to be deep or profound. Some can be cheeky, designed to spark laughter or flirtation. If I peeked into your playlists right now, what song would embarrass you the most? Or, what's the most ridiculous thing you've ever done on a dare? These kinds of questions keep the energy light while still peeling back layers of personality. The balance between curiosity and playfulness makes someone feel both safe and excited, which is a rare combination. And here's where your delivery matters. Asking the right question in the wrong way kills its magic. If your tone is flat, it feels like you're just checking boxes. But if you slow down, let your voice carry warmth, and actually listen to the answer, the question transforms. People can feel when you genuinely care about their response, and that sincerity is what makes them open up further. It's not enough to ask. You have to receive with interest. Nod, reflect, follow up. If they tell you about their favorite trip, don't just say, "Cool." Ask, "What made it stand out?" That second layer shows you weren't just fishing for an easy reply, you wanted to know the story behind it. Irresistible questions also create contrast. Most people are used to surface level conversations, so when you bring a question that digs just a little deeper, it feels refreshing. They may even stop and say, "That's a good question." That moment of pause means you've successfully pulled them out of autopilot. And once someone leaves autopilot with you, they remember you. The other secret is knowing when to stop talking. A great question followed by your own nervous chatter ruins its effect. Ask, then wait. Let them take the stage. Sometimes people need a moment to find their words, and that silence is where intimacy builds. The more comfortable you are with the pause, the more space you give them to share. And when someone shares freely, the connection strengthens without you needing to do much else. Over time, you'll notice that the best questions aren't rehearsed lines, but natural reflections of your curiosity. The more you pay attention to what excites you about someone, the easier it becomes to shape your questions. Maybe it's the way their eyes light up when they mention a hobby, or the way their voice shifts when they talk about a memory. Following those cues with thoughtful questions shows that you're not just hearing their words, you're tuned into their energy. That kind of attention is magnetic. So while an opening makes you stand out and your voice pulls them in, it's the questions you ask that keep them invested. When you become the person who consistently sparks stories, laughter, and reflection, you stop being just another conversation. You become the highlight of their night, the person they want to keep talking to, the connection they want to deepen. And that is how irresistible questions turn a moment into momentum. After you've captured attention with an intriguing opening, drawn them in with the way you use your voice, and kept them engaged through irresistible questions, the next natural step is to build chemistry through playful teasing. This is the point where the conversation shifts from simply being interesting to becoming electric. Teasing, when done with charm and warmth, creates a spark that can't be manufactured any other way. It sends a clear signal. I'm attracted, I'm confident, and I'm not afraid to play. And people respond to playfulness far more than they do to serious, predictable exchanges. The reason teasing works is that it introduces tension, but not the kind that pushes someone away, the kind that pulls them closer. Think of it as dancing on the line between compliment and challenge. If you only compliment, you risk sounding generic like everyone else. If you only challenge, you risk sounding cold or arrogant. But teasing balances the two. It says, I like you, but I'm not going to make it too easy. That balance is where attraction thrives. For example, let's say someone shares that they love cooking. Instead of just saying, that's great, I love food, you could smile and say, so are you actually good? Or do you just make a mean instant noodle and hype it up? That little tease is lighthearted, it's cheeky, and it keeps the conversation playful. Or maybe he tells you he's into the gym. You could grin and say, oh, so you're one of those people who actually enjoys burpees. That's suspicious. The point isn't to belittle, it's to nudge, to poke in a way that makes them laugh and want to fire back. Playful teasing also reveals confidence. It shows that you're comfortable enough not to put someone on a pedestal, even if you're attracted to them. That confidence is magnetic. No one wants to feel like they're being worshipped or like the other person is desperate for approval. They want to feel chosen by someone who has standards, someone who can see their quirks and still find them charming. Teasing does exactly that. It acknowledges the person while keeping the dynamic exciting. But here's the golden rule. Teasing should always be rooted in kindness. The goal is to flirt, not to wound. A tease should make someone laugh or smile. Never make them self-conscious or uncomfortable. You want them to feel elevated by your words, not diminished. That's why playful exaggerations, silly assumptions, or light mockery about harmless things work so well. Tease about the way he orders the fanciest drink, the fact that he's wearing sneakers that probably have their own personality by now, or the way he pretends to hate something everyone secretly loves. Keep it safe, fun, and affectionate. Timing is everything. Teasing too early, before any rapport is built, can feel jarring. But once you've established a baseline of warmth and curiosity, teasing becomes the accelerant. It breaks monotony, it injects energy, and it makes the interaction memorable. Without it, conversations can remain polite but flat. With it, conversations suddenly feel alive. And don't forget, teasing is a two-way street. When someone teases you back, it's not a sign to get defensive. It's a sign they're playing the same game. That's when you lean into the banter. Accept the jab with a grin, fire back with something light, and let the tension build. This back and forth is what creates that spark people talk about. The one that feels like chemistry you can't quite explain. The beauty of mastering playful teasing is that it naturally blends with everything else you've already been doing. You open with intrigue, you drew them in with your voice, you deepen the connection with irresistible questions. And now, teasing layers on attraction. It's the bridge between connection and chemistry. It signals that this isn't just a pleasant chat, this is flirtation. And flirtation, when done with charm and respect, is what transforms an encounter into something unforgettable. When the playfulness has created that spark and the conversation feels alive, what really deepens the connection is how you listen. People underestimate listening because it seems so simple. You just hear the words, right? But real listening goes far beyond waiting for your turn to speak. Real listening makes someone feel seen, and feeling seen is one of the most powerful forms of attraction there is. Think about the last time you spoke to someone who genuinely paid attention. They weren't distracted, they weren't scrolling their phone, they weren't rushing to tell their own story. They leaned in, they mirrored your energy, they asked follow-up questions that proved they had actually absorbed what you said. Didn't that feel rare? Didn't it make you want to keep talking? That's the effect deep listening has. It builds trust, intimacy, and the kind of bond that can't be faked. Most people are not great listeners. They nod while secretly preparing their next sentence. They hear words but miss emotions. This is why when you choose to truly listen, you stand out immediately. Let's say he tells you about a trip he took, and you don't just nod and move on. Instead, you catch the excitement in his voice and reflect it back. You sound like that trip still lights you up. What made it so special for you? That single reflection shows not only that you heard the words, but that you noticed the feeling. People crave that kind of recognition. They want their emotions to be noticed, not just their facts. Another way listening becomes magnetic is through remembering. If someone tells you a small detail, maybe the name of their dog, or the fact that they're obsessed with a certain food, and you bring it up later, you immediately separate yourself from everyone else. Remembering shows investment. It says, I didn't just hear you, I valued what you shared enough to keep it with me. And when people feel valued, they open up more. That openness creates vulnerability, and vulnerability is the heart of connection. But listening isn't passive. It's not about sitting silently while someone talks. It's about engaging with presence. Ask follow-ups that make them go deeper. Mirror back their words occasionally to show you're tracking. Use your body language, nodding, leaning in, holding eye contact, to communicate that you're fully there. Even small verbal acknowledgements like, that must have felt amazing, or I can see why that would frustrate you, act like bridges that carry the conversation forward. Each little signal you give makes the other person feel safer in sharing more. What makes this stage so powerful in building attraction is that most people crave someone who listens without judgment or agenda. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the one who listens becomes magnetic. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's unforgettable. Because attraction isn't just about excitement, it's also about depth. Playful teasing might light the spark, but deep listening feeds the fire so it doesn't burn out. There's another layer to listening, helps you see beyond the surface. It allows you to pick up on values, passions, and vulnerabilities that reveal who someone really is. And once you know those things, your connection naturally becomes more authentic. You're no longer engaging with the mask they wear for everyone else. You're connecting with the person underneath. That authenticity is rare, and rare is irresistible. So while the earlier steps made you stand out, it's listening that makes you memorable in the long run. When someone walks away from a conversation thinking, wow, I felt like they really got me, that feeling lingers far longer than a clever line or a witty tease. It's the glue that holds the spark together, transforming a moment of attraction into the foundation of something lasting. After you've set the tone with a captivating opening, drawn him in with the rhythm of your voice, kept him engaged with irresistible questions, and added playfulness through teasing, then deepened the connection with genuine listening, the final step is knowing how to close with a clear move. This is where many conversations fizzle out, not because there wasn't chemistry, but because no one took responsibility for turning that chemistry into action. You can have all the spark in the world, but if you walk away without direction, the moment slips into nothing more than a nice memory. Closing with clarity is about taking that energy and anchoring it in the real world. The mistake people often make is relying on vague endings. They say things like, we should hang out sometime, or let's do this again. But without any follow through, those lines collapse. They don't sound confident and they leave too much up in the air. Attraction thrives on decisiveness, and decisiveness doesn't mean being pushy. It means being intentional. When you end with clarity, you show that you value the connection enough to want more of it, and you're confident enough to state that directly. It can be as simple as suggesting a next step. If the conversation revealed that he loves a certain type of food, you could smile and say, you have to take me to your favorite spot. When's good for you? If he mentioned a book, you could say, you just sold me on that one. I'll read it, and you owe me coffee so I can give you my review. The point is to tie the next move to something that already came up in conversation, so it feels natural and not forced. That way, you're not pulling an invitation out of thin air. You're extending what you've already built. Confidence in closing also shows that you're not afraid of clarity. So many people dance around what they want, terrified of rejection. But that hesitation kills attraction. When you close with a clear move, you're not begging for approval, you're offering an opportunity. And if it's not accepted, you walk away with your confidence intact, knowing that you were bold enough to put yourself out there. That in itself is attractive. Another aspect of closing well is leaving a strong emotional imprint. You don't want to drift off with a flat bye. End with a compliment that feels personal and sincere, something that reflects the energy of the interaction. It might be as direct as, "You've been the most interesting part of my night," or playful like, "Your trouble." And I mean that in the best way. That final note plants a memory, so even if the next step doesn't happen right away, the impression you left lingers. Clarity in closing also communicates maturity. It shows you know what you want, and you're not afraid to act on it. Whether that's exchanging numbers, setting up a plan, or simply stating that you enjoyed the connection, it creates certainty. And certainty is rare in a world where most people play games, hedge their bets, or hope the other person takes initiative. Being the one who ends with clarity sets you apart. Ultimately, the close isn't about pressure, it's about direction. It's about taking all the attraction you've created through your opening, your voice, your questions, your playfulness, and your listening, and giving it a place to grow. Without that, the energy dissipates. With it, the interaction transforms into momentum. So when you feel that spark, don't leave it floating in the air. Anchor it. End with a move that shows intention, confidence, and clarity, and you'll turn fleeting moments into lasting connections.